This conference will now be recorded.
Yes, fine. So as we discussed, so in Oracle, each of the module is restricted by access. So it provides a security. So to access to the AP accounts payable, there are certain roles given by Oracle which you should assign those roles to the user so that the user should be able to access to the business unit. Okay, so let us go and assign the roles uh, to the user called Millennia, because we don't have the we haven't assigned the AP related roles to this a user. So that is why you will not be able to see the any of the relevant task for AP accounts payable. Okay, let us go and see first what are the roles available for accounts payable module. Okay, where do you assign the role? Tools, security console, yes. Security console, user, search for the user. So once you go to the user, and here is the concept called add role.
Add.
Yes. So check what are the roles available for accounts payable. You can see once you enter accounts payable invoice supervisor. Okay, let us get assigned this role. So we'll discuss in short what exactly this role will do. Similarly, accounts payable payment supervisor also will be there. Okay, so the other role is accounts payable manager. So we'll discuss in short brief what exactly which role gives you the access to the which function of accounts payable module. Okay, so these three roles are enough for us. There is another role as well, accounts payable specialist. Let me check. Supervisor or specialist?
Specialist, sir.
This is one of the role. So those three roles are enough for us for practicing, but you can assign this role as well, not an issue. Okay, so we have assigned the roles to the user, right? Just finish up this, exit from this form. Yes, now these are the seeded roles. So we see accounts payable invoice supervisor, payments supervisor, and as well as the accounts payable manager. So what exactly this role will does? So accounts payable invoice supervisor will gives the user access to the invoice workbench area, where you can create the invoices and you can make the actions, whatever the actions that you can do on the invoice. Those are the privileges that will get assigned to the user. Okay, similarly for the accounts payable payment supervisor will gives you the access to generate the payments, to process the payments, maybe an individual payment or batch payment. So what are those different tasks we'll discuss while we are working on the payments of accounts payable. So accounts payable manager is, it gives an additional privileges where it gives you the a reporting kind of dashboard where it displays the analysis of your accounts payables transactions as well as the payables manager. Generally it gives you the access to the additional fields like the dashboard, as well as also generally your manager will be the approver for your invoices, right? Once you are using the your invoice approvals process, so the person who approves those invoices will be the accounts payable manager. So that is one of the function, but in general the accounts payable manager role will have the functions, will give you the functions or tasks that you do once the invoice is created. Okay, so the major objective, the primary objective of accounts payable invoice supervisor is gives you the work area where you create the invoices. Payments will give you the work area where you create the payments, and payables will give you the access to the dashboards where total the AP transaction flow, everything will be displayed in the analytics kind of thing, and also it gives you the additional dashboards or the task which you do once you create the invoices. Fine. So we are assigned with the roles to the user. So once the role is assigned, so what we need to do? We need to provide the data access, right? So it doesn't mean, see, there are number of payable modules are implemented for various business units. So assigning this role doesn't mean that it gives you the access to the any of the specific business unit, right? So likewise we did for GL, where we assigned the data access set called ledger name. So here also you need to provide the security context saying that by using the user millennia, by using the role called accounts payable supervisor, has to access to the which business unit data. So that is where your data access talks about. So let us go and assign the data access for these three roles. Where do you do that? Setup and maintenance, manage data access for users. We can do it from here also, but let us go into the implementation project. So manage data access for users. This is the relevant task. Click on this and click on go to task. Create, click on create symbol and provide the data access for the user with the combination of role and the security context. So what I am doing here, let us first go and select the accounts payable invoice supervisor, and the security context should be your business unit. Why? Because accounts payable module works at what level? Business unit level, right? That is where we define the accounts payable module, and the default value set we had set up at business unit, right? In the scope also you select the business unit, right?
Okay.
Yes. Let us get assigned the MIT Power business unit. Similarly, assign the same security context for the different role.
Now we are assigning the roles based roles at a business unit level, right?
No, roles we assign. See, role.
Means in the initial last step, we have already also assigned the roles, right? We
Correct, correct.
also now also we are assigning at a business unit level.
No, no, no.
Same.
So no, no, no. See, role doesn't have anything to do with the business unit. Okay.
Oh,
Basically, the main purpose of the major purpose of the role is to, it is one of the part of your security access of Oracle applications. So
mhm.
what roles gives you is the role will be having its privileges. When we say privileges, what is that? Access. Okay.
Mhm.
So role
Mhm.
gives you the access to the certain functions, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so in general, what happened? Role is a kind of a skeleton. A skeleton. What do you call? A predefined whatever the task. Okay. So once this role is assigned with the what you need to do. See,
Mhm.
role in Oracle, role is the security context. So once you are logged into your Oracle applications, so to perform any of the activities, first and primary requirement is you should be assigned with your role. So what is the
Yes.
role? Role will be the combination of privileges, right? What does it mean, a privilege? Privilege is the task that you are going to perform. Okay,
Yep.
so as a user, so what function you are going to do? Are you going to do GL activity? Are you going to an receivables accounts receivable activity, or are you going to an accounts payable activity? Right.
Yep.
So what Oracle has done is it had grouped certain privileges into a role, and that role is given as a predefined value. Okay,
Yes.
so you can go and assign that role to the user, so that by using that role, user can be able to do the privileges that are mentioned in that role,
Yes.
right?
Agree.
So the general accountant, obviously the GL user will have to access to the ledger, where he can create the manual journals, or he can create the currency conversion rates or whatever, right?
Yeah.
For an accounts payable user, obviously the user should be able to create the invoices, and the user should be able to generate the payments, right?
Yeah.
But here, if you notice, so if you notice, there are two different roles are given for the accounts payable invoice and accounts payable payment activity.
Yeah.
So
Because
why
both
this?
can be given to same person. Yeah.
Yes, yes, you can assign, but why Oracle hasn't given these two functions in one role is because of the security compliance. In
Yeah.
it is generally SOX compliance. If
Yeah.
you're if you work on any of the corporate environment, it is a SOX compliance. Like the
It's an
person who has
internal
invoice, he should not be
Yeah.
able to generate the payment,
Agree.
right?
Yeah.
So that is why these two functions, two business
Perfect.
functions are given in a different role, right?
Yeah.
So what we are talking is this role is the combination of privileges, right? So
Yes.
when the user is assigned with a role, so when the user is assigned with a role, user called Millennia is assigned with this role. Let us assume that this user, where are these bullets, man? Okay, no worries. So let us assume that this user is assigned with the business user is assigned with this accounts payable supervisor, right?
Yeah.
So this user Millennia, their role assigned data access, manage invoice supervisor, it already had the role privileges, what actions he can do, but you can do these actions for which business unit, right?
Yeah. That is generic one. Yeah. Generic.
So that is where we are assigning this data access.
Okay. Got
Data
it.
access, right? So maybe MIT Power, MIT Power, right? Maybe MIT Ports,
Yeah.
right? There will be n number of businesses. If you see in the Oracle applications, of course, this is since this is an test environment or the
Mm.
dev environment, so there will be a number of business units. But
Yeah.
in your implementation, definitely you will be seeing the multiple business units. So you need to specify the data access. Which component, which business unit data has to be provided access to this business user,
Yeah.
so that he will be able to provide the invoice, book the transactions. So if you remember, one of the tasks we discussed while discussing about the business unit, what is the major activity of the business unit? Business unit does transaction booking or perform transactions on one of the legal entity, right? For the one of the legal entity, that is what we discussed, right? How this business unit is linked to your legal entity? While we had assigned a call, assigned business unit business functions. If you remember, there we enable the business functions. What are the business functions that business unit is going to do, like the
Yeah.
invoice processing, payments processing, and procurement, accounts receivable, supply, customer receipts. Many things we had enabled. In the same form, top right corner, we had assigned the legal entity and primary ledger, right?
Yes.
So once you assign the LE and the primary ledger, what does it mean? If the user, assume that user is provided access to the MIT Power BU. So whenever the user go and book transactions in this business unit, this transaction goes and save in the primary ledger, INR primary ledger, and for the legal entity, MIT Power, right?
Yeah.
That is these are the two components we had linked, right? So that
Yes.
is how this entire linking happened so far.
Got it. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
so
Thank you.
yeah, fine, thank you. So we had provided the data access to the user for the given AP roles. Now our next job should be the data should get synchronized to your IDM, right? Where your actual IDM application, where the security access related concepts are maintained in that server. So that data should get refreshed into your IDM module. So what do you do for that? Actually, the system takes care of that activity, but in behind the scenes it gets runs. In general, in implementation, we will schedule the process called retrieve LEAP changes. But since we are going to do that activity, since we are going to log in into the AP immediately, the data might or might not get transferred to IDM. So that it is better we go and trigger the program retrieve latest LEAP changes. Looks like this application is slow.
Only LDAP given, sir.
Sorry.
LDAP given, not REIT.
No, if we search with the minimum search criteria, it will fetch the number of the search will get expand, right? So it takes larger time. retrieve latest LDAP changes. So this program takes care of synchronizing the data from your ERP to your IDM module, IDM servers, where your actual security related data is maintained. Okay, this IDM is also part of your Oracle Cloud subscription, but the data, the objective is the data is maintained in a different server so that the data needs to be synced up with that application as well. Since this is also a Sunday model. Yeah, let me check by chance if the data got synchronized. I think it got synchronized. That is why you can see the payable invoice and payments work areas are got enabled. So if you remember, while discussing on the roles, I have told like the accounts payable manager will get access to the dashboards. Actually, there will be one more work area, the dashboards. If you see in the GL, general accounting dashboard, for payables also, you should see the dashboard called accounts pay AP dashboard. Why it is not displayed? Because while we are assigning the role, even though we selected, it didn't get assigned, because in short, we haven't assigned the accounts payable manager role for to this user. Okay, so let us go to the user. Anyway, the data got synchronized, so we don't need to trigger that program. Okay, so we are done with the data access as well. We have assigned the roles, we have assigned data access, and next our job is to perform the transactions. So to perform the transaction, first the period should be open, right? Why? Because each of the likewise, like we did the open period for payables, each of the subledger is controlled by its accounting period. So what is that accounting period? Whatever the from where this accounting period gets derived, the accounting period will get derived from the calendar that you assign to your primary ledger, right? Our calendar had 13 periods, out of which 12 are my accounting period, one adjustment period. So for each of these 12 periods, we are going to work on, we are going to which means each of this 12 accounting period, as per the requirement, as per your calendar requirement, you will be going and booking the transactions in the relevant period and move on to the next period as the time pass on, right? Since we are in October, the transactions we should we should be booking in the period October, so we need to open the period for the October for accounts payable as well. Okay, so first our job is to first open the accounting period. Okay, so if you come here, so this is invoice work area and the invoice task panel. In the invoices task panel, we can see accounts payable accounting periods. So you can open your period, the accounts payables module period from here, or else you can open from the general ledger as well. Okay, so there is one limitation in this, not the limitation, just why we see the multiple ledgers here. So we'll discuss on that one. So let us go and find our ledger. Okay, MIT-IN, right? For this accounting period, for this ledger, we have selected MIT-IN and go and select, open the first period. So when we are working on the AP, so when you are working, when you are trying to open the first period of this MIT BU, what it is asking? It is asking you to open your first period. Open the first period. So as we discussed, we can open the period from the GL work area by going into the task panel, accounting periods, and also the same activity you can do it from your general ledger as well. So we will go and see from the GL as well. Okay, go to the accounting, general accounting. Still it is not. Go to general accounting, click on general accounting dashboard. Sorry, click on period close. Okay, so once you click on period close, what had happened? It pops up the ledger access, right? What are ledgers you have access to? So based on for that ledger, what is the period status? Because for GL, if you remember, for the MIT-IN primary ledger, we had already opened the period till October. That is where for the period accounting period October, the GL it is saying it is open. But for all these sub ledgers, it shows that these are not open, never open. If you can see the status. So when you are trying to book a transaction in any of the subledger, the period of this of the corresponding subledger has also to be in open status, right? So if you go and select, let us go and select the November. So what it is showing?
22, I think.
For the MIT ledger, in GL also we have never opened the period, right? So that is
Not
why
open.
it is, yes, for payable also the similar status. So what you can do is This is 23. This is December 22. These are not open. And check November 22. So GL should be future enterable, right? So this we had discussed, right? So November, even November for the AP also it is not open. So just October 22. This you can click on the refresh. Just if system to get refresh the data, click on payable periods. So okay, why this is not open? Actually, it should get open, right? Why? Whether we'll go and see whether the program triggered or not. Because from AP we had already triggered the program, right? So for the period open.
You mean to say that LDAP program? Huh?
No, not the LEAP. So what happens in any of the applications? So once we click on something, behind the scenes some programs gets triggered, right? So
Yeah.
from AP, remember we had clicked on the a button called open period, first open period for Jan 22 for accounts payable. So
Yeah.
what happens in return? It triggers a program behind the scenes. So that program where you can see you can go to the tools and schedule processes. Okay,
Yeah.
so go to tools and schedule process. This is the area where all the programs may be triggered or scheduled. All of them are displayed here.
Yeah.
Okay, let us go on one more time. Let us go and trigger the period from accounts payable. October still not open. Why? Sorry, the Jan is already open. So for the ledger, why this ledger has come into picture? Somehow it didn't get open. First period should be Jan 22. Not sure why it is showing the backward dates. Let me do one thing. Let me quickly add the accounts payable manager role as well. Let me log out and log in. If you have seen, this got enabled. Earlier, this dashboard was not there. This is enabled just once we assign the accounts payable manager role. So let us go and see. So the process got triggered. If you see this one, so this is what I was talking. So in return, you should see a program. You are not changing. If you leave this page, then you have to continue. MITIN. So the status now for this ledger for the MITIN for the accounts payable application, right? The period status, the John got open now. So this is the status, right? the pencil with book page. So this is the open status, and this is the closed status, and permanently closed with lock symbol, and the pencil with the future enterable. So let us go and open the period for October. Okay, so for the payables module, for our business unit, the for the ledger MITIN, the periods got open till October 22. Okay, now, so now our job is to, so that we should be able to create the transactions, right? Okay, so let us again come back from this page. So from the accounts payable module, we need to navigate to the work area called invoices. Okay, once you click on the invoices, the application has landed you to a page where it shows some display information. So what are those? So we call them as an info tiles in Oracle. Okay, so what is this, what information does this info tile brings in? Each of this info tile has its own information, which will pull the data and displace into the relevant bucket. Okay, so what are those info tiles? Scan, recent, holds, approval, and prepaid. So scanned invoices, what is this scanned invoices? When we say scanned, it is scanned invoices. Okay, scanned invoices is one of the way where the invoice will be created automatically from a document. Okay, a scan, a PDF document, or from an from the PDF document, or from an Word document, or from an JPEG, whatever. It depends upon their format that Oracle is going to support. For that, the invoice will be created automatically from the invoice document. So this is actually an additional subscription which each company, the customer goes into an agreement with the Oracle saying that the scanned images has to be sent to the Oracle, and Oracle will process that invoices automatically and send back to your application. So how this process works? How this process works is, whenever the client chooses for this scanned invoice option, so Oracle gives you an dedicated email ID where the invoices, the invoice documents will be sent to that dedicated email ID. Okay, so let us say you are given, you are going for an implementation for MIT. MIT has chosen for scanned invoice. So what Oracle will give you, this function will get enabled. The scanned invoice function will get enabled in Oracle application in first place, and once that is done, then the Oracle will give you a dedicated email ID for which it will ask you to send the documents. Okay, the invoice documents. Okay, so once you send those invoice documents, the Oracle automation process itself will create the invoices and it sends back to your application. Okay, those are the invoices will displayed here. Okay, so whatever these invoices which got created from the scan will be an incomplete invoices. Okay, it will have just the whatever the invoice, it can be parsed, and it is able to create that information will be punched into the invoices, and it will send back to your application. So you can go and view that the invoices, what level the invoice is created. Okay, that we will just see what information against this document. See, go and see, click on the attachment. The so the ideally the ideal scenario is the scanned invoice functionality is enabled for this customer, and it requires some configurations to be done. Those configurations we will be doing as a consultant, and once the process is done, the configuration piece is done. So assume that this is the whatever the application attachment we are opening, right? This is the image actually which had been sent to the Oracle, and based on that information, this is the invoice details that got created. Okay, it is kind of data entry process. Data entry process in the creation of invoice will be further supported by Oracle, but for this subscription Oracle charges to the customer additional charges for to enable this scanned invoice functionality. Okay, so the next info tile is the recent invoices. So what does it mean is, whatever the recent invoices which got created in the times, even it gives you the timestamp area as well. Last 24 hours, what are the invoices which are created? It will pulls into this bucket. So once you click on this, any of the infotel, if you click on this, the drop down arrow, it shows the data which each of this infotel contains. Okay, so if you see the scanned invoices, it had shown the scanned invoices also in various aging buckets. So what are the invoices, scanned invoices? Those are created in last 1 week, 0 to 7 days. From today to backward 7 days, what are the invoices it got created? There are 0 invoices. 8 to 14 also there were 0 invoices were created. But for the bucket, aging bucket of more than 15 days, there are 19 invoices got created. So those are the data which you can see. Similarly, for the recent application, there are no invoices. That is why it is not showing any data. Okay, recent invoices, which means here for the last 24 hours it is showing. Okay, so if you click on the 24 hours, it got changed to 3 days. Even last 3 days also there are no invoices created for this application accounts payable. Okay, 5 3 5, even 7 days. So again it's go back to the 24 hours now. So there are different options are available to pull your recent data. Even you can check what are the 24 hour, what are the invoices, recent invoices which got created in 24 hours, last 24 hours, or last 3 days, 5 days, and 7 days. Those are the options which are available in Oracle that you can check that you can navigate through with this form. Okay, so even it shows you this symbol, the 0. If assume that if it is 0, but in reality we will see in the subsequent process, but assume that in last 24 hours 3 invoices got created. Let us show this number has 3. So even this 3 also it further segregates how many of them are validated, how many of them are not validated. The unvalidated invoices will show in orange color, that we will see in next classes. Okay, so once there is some data, application automatically shows. And then the next info tile is the holds related info tile. So what does it mean is, holds is the one of the process in your Oracle applications. What it will do is, system does certain validations. So when you are creating an invoice, there are certain validations or controls that you lay down as part of your configurations. If any of the invoices crosses that the validations or the criteria that we set, then those invoices will be put on hold. Okay, so these holds are what type of holds? So there are 30 invoices which are failed in validation holds. So what are those? So if you open these invoices, it will show. Let us say, for example, the invoice BM, very first invoice, what it is saying, total of invoice line does not equal the invoice amount. Okay, we will see that in some time now. So why this holds comes into picture. Okay, basically there are manual holds and system holds. On a high level, system holds means system application has laid down some predefined conditions, and those conditions has to be met by the invoice application. Okay, unless until you correct that system hold, it will not allow you to move further. What is the move further process? Making this invoice available for payment, right? So in short, you will not be able to make the payments against that invoices which are on hold. You cannot make any payments until unless you release that invoice. Okay, to release that invoice, what is the message, what is the showstopper for this invoice? Applications gives you a message, so you go according to that message, you go and do the perform necessary activity, and then the invoice will be available for release. Once you click on the invoice, as you can see the form, you can see a button called release, right? So that is where you actually release the invoice. The next info tile is the approval. What does this approval is? Once you enable your approval process for your accounts payable invoices, so then this info tile will get enabled on your dashboard, otherwise it will not display. And the next thing is this this info tile also has the buckets, aging buckets. So what are the different statuses? What are the invoices which are pending? How many invoices which are in pending? Once you click on that pending, there are 0 invoices. What are the invoices which are marked in others? Maybe it might be in others approval, or maybe the invoice is sent back by the approver for additional information. Whatever, those invoices will be grouped into other. And if any of the invoices rejected, then the specific invoice you can see here saying that the approver has rejected the invoices. Once you open the invoices, you will be able to see the comment that the approver has posted. Okay, the prepaid is the info tile which shows the data related to your prepayment invoices. Okay, prepayment is one of the invoice type which you make use in Oracle application to record the advances that you paid to the suppliers. Okay, so again this info tile pulls you the prepayments into different various aging buckets. 0 to 30, how many? 0 to 30, last 0 to 30 days, how many prepaid invoices? If you click on this, it shows only the 4 invoices. 30 to 60 days, there are 0. More than 60 days, how many? 8 invoices. So these are the info tiles which groups data into the predefined info tiles. Okay, so based on this, each of the info tile, you can go and view the relevant data. It is just for the giving the application view and the various transactions under which task they fall into, right? You can go and quickly view the invoices where it actually stands. Okay, this is again a display kind of activity that Oracle has given. Okay, similarly there is an at the top right corner there is a button called refresh. So once you click on this, the data related to these info tiles will get refreshed. Okay, so now our job is to go and create an invoice, manual invoice. Okay, so go to the task panel. So this is the task panel, and task panel has various tasks grouped under different tasks. Okay, there is an task called invoices, under which there are certain tasks which are marked, as well as accounting, assets, account payables, payables periods. So payable periods we had already used, right? To open the AP period, we had navigated from here. Okay, and we'll discuss about the invoices, what are the tasks that can be do. You can create an invoice, you can create the invoice from spreadsheet, you can even create the recurring invoices that we will see in our next classes. Manage invoices is to query the invoices, the existing invoices which you can query. You can go and view the data. Apply for missing conversion rates, it is currency conversion rates. Validate invoices is one of the action that you do an invoice validation. Initial approval workflow, it is for approvals. Import invoices to import the invoices from third parties. Correct import errors is the task where you when you do while you are importing, maybe there might be some invoices get stuck in your interface with the error, right? Those are the cases where you navigate from here to correct those invoices. Similarly, accounting is the accounting of your invoices that you do as part of your invoice action. Okay, now let us go and see the invoices, how you create manual invoice. Okay, so this is once you create, click on manual invoice, application has open up an invoice creation form, but it has grouped the data into various grids. Okay, so in general, what an invoice contains in general, so invoice contains, it is a commercial invoice which contains the information like who has given you the invoice, first point, right? Generally this invoice, whatever you are creating in your Oracle application payables, you will be creating that invoice in your invoice payable invoice based out on the actual invoice given by your supplier, right? When you go and procure some material, the vendor from whom you purchased, the purchase person, the vendor will give you an invoice, right? Based on that source document, you are creating an invoice in your Oracle applications. So what all information it contains is the originator or the person or the vendor who has given you the invoice, and what is the amount it is given for, and what purpose, right? For what item, what item you bought, or what services you taken from that vendor. So those all the information will be mentioned on you in your generalized invoice process, right? So that information, maybe the information that whatever we discussed, more or less, maybe there might be additional information that Oracle captures, but in general that information is grouped into various categories or the areas on your invoice work area. So if you see here, this is my invoice area where Oracle has given a predefined structure. Even Oracle also gives you a predefined structure that how the invoice data is get stored. Okay, each invoice will, likewise we had discussed the structure for journal, right? Similarly for invoice also you will be having a predefined structure in which the invoice data will be maintained, or invoice data will has to be punched in while creating the invoices. Okay, so the invoice will have an invoice header. So invoice will have an invoice header. What all information that invoice header can contain, right? So there is an there is an item called identifying PO. When you are creating an invoice against a purchase order, that's where you give that information. As well as there is a business unit and the supplier and supplier site against which you are creating an invoice, the invoice number and the invoice amount for which the invoice is getting created, invoice type, there are different types of invoices, invoice date and payment terms. This is your invoice header information. Okay, once the invoice header is data is punched in, so the invoice will have its lines. So what are information you give at invoice header? So let us check for our MIT Power BU. So guys, So let me first put up the invoice structure and then we'll discuss on that one. So what is the invoice structure in Oracle is, first level will be your invoice header where you punch in certain information, and invoice line can have, invoice header can have invoice lines. Okay, one invoice header can have multiple lines. Okay, and one invoice header can have multiple lines, and one line can have multiple distributions, invoice distributions. Okay, one invoice can have multiple distributions. We will see what is that distributions. And there is another component called installments. So basically installments are derived based on your payment structure. If you remember, while we are discussing on the payment terms concept, we had clearly discussed, once you define your payment terms and once you assign that to the invoice, the installments will can you, if someone is not speaking, can you please go on mute? Thank you. So once you assign your payment terms to an invoice, so depends upon the payment terms condition that you define in your payment terms, the invoice amount will be derived into the installments, right? That is what we discussed. So we will see what is that installment as well, while once we create the invoice. Okay, basically this is the structure of your invoice. Okay, invoice header will have lines will have distributions. Okay, invoice, in total invoice will have installments is a separate task. I mean, it is not depend upon your the invoice, it doesn't come under this invoice lines and distribution hierarchy. Okay, so basically this is your structure. Okay, let us go and see to create a manual invoice. Okay, so once you, one of the primary component, one of the primary value, for very first value that you need to give on the invoice header is the business unit. Okay, so we had created a MIT Power Business Unit and we had provided the data access to this MIT Power Business Unit, right? But ideally this should be displayed. But when we go and see in the application, we can see n number of business units, which means the user called Millennia is by default is being provided with these business units, for which this business unit he can go and book the invoices as per the system, as per the scenario. Right now what we are seeing is application is displaying multiple business units, the n number of business unit that exist in the application. This is displaying in these in your business unit form. Why it is displaying? Any guess? Anyone? Ideally the expectation should be, because we have given the role accounts payable role, so it is one of the data access component, and we from the beginning we are discussing that Oracle application is primarily, each user is primarily driven by the security, and the security will gives the user to access to the specific form of the application, right? So as part of that, what we did, we had assigned accounts payable related roles to the user, accounts payable, maybe the invoice supervisor, payment supervisor, and accounts payable manager. And for that roles, we had assigned a security context called MIT Power Business Unit. So the expectation should be user should be able to view only this business unit, right? But why the business unit column of field of this application is showing the number of business unit. Any guess? Anyone?
To give only business unit, MIT, sir.
Correct, correct.
That
We have
business unit only. So
yes,
that's
yes,
why we show only one business unit.
correct. But you can see multiple business units here, right? In list of values, if you see the screen, there are a number of business units you can see. So which means that this user millennia is able to access the number of business units. Ideally, the expectation what we discussed is it should display only the MIT power. Why it is displaying the other business units where it should get restricted to only it should restrict to the user to access to only the MIT power business unit. But why the other business units are getting displayed in the list of values? Anyone?
It's a test environment, right? So I think
No, no. Yes, it is a test environment, but that is not the exact answer. So what we did, I mean, guess, any guess. So we discussed one of the important concept called for security. So maybe I just give an idea, just give an hint.
It has access to all those views.
No, we have given access to only one business unit, right? In the security context, we have clearly given assigned only one business unit. Any guess? No guess? Okay. So what we did is we had created a user millennia and the user is assigned with the accounts payable invoice supervisor, and the security context we had assigned is the MIT Power BU, right? So the expectation is while the user logs in, because of this sequence, by using this role, he should be able to this business unit. But why we are seeing this multiple business unit is because if you remember, while we are creating the business unit, we had assigned a concept called reference data set, which is common. Do you remember? Anyone? You can't even recollect?
Immediate net 30.
Those are the payment terms.
Yes, sir.
But I was referring to what is the reference data set? Did we assign any tag?
The is a one type of security.
Correct,
We have
correct,
sent common reference data set and we
correct.
customized one thing.
We customized that one for we have created a custom data set and that we assign to the payment terms. Payment terms related data set assignment. But if you remember, while creating the MIT Power BU business, MIT Power BU is the business unit. While creating this, if you remember, there was a one of the field column, one of the field on the form called set. For against that, we have taken the reference, that is set means is a reference data set. If you remember that the value we taken is common. What we discussed, common reference data set is one of the seeded value that Oracle gives you in the application. Okay, so are we clear on till that point? At least, do we remember that we have assigned the reference data set common for our business unit?
Yes, sir.
So what happens is what we discussed in while discussing for the reference data set also. Reference data set is used to share the common configurations across your business units. That is what discussed, right? So whatever the configuration that you assign that are linked with this common set will be available for each of the business unit, right? What because of that reason, let us say we have net 30 payment terms, and that payment terms is assigned to a reference data set called BU1 and BU2. Okay, as an end user, once you are logging into once you log in into this payment terms, so as we discussed, these net 30 payment terms are going to be used in for business unit 1 and business unit 2. And since this is a common setup, what we do, we create a common reference data set, right? One reference data set, and that we will assign to business unit, right? So that what happens, once you define one payment terms will can be accessed by two business unit, right? So let us say this business unit millennia user, end user millennia user is going to work on invoice creation for the business unit 1, and he should be able to access to the payment terms net 30. Why? Because this payment terms in return is assigned to the business unit with the term called reference data set, right? So whenever you assign a business unit or data access to the any security context to any of the user, what happens is by default, whatever the business unit is assigned with that reference data set, those business unit will get access to that user with this common role. This is the seeded role, right? Seeded role that Oracle has given, that role we are using. Okay, so now did you understand why we will be able to, why we are able to see the multiple business units in the business unit? Because all of these business units are assigned with a reference data set called common. Okay, so whenever we are assigning a data access for the user with the security context as business unit to access to the AP data, application go and checks what is the reference data set assigned to that business unit. Okay, if the reference data set is dedicated reference data set, I mean the one business unit having the only one reference data set, I mean if you have created, while creating a business unit, you have created your own reference data set, dedicated reference data set for that business unit, and that you assign in this list of value, it will show only one business unit for which you granted access. Okay, but in this case, why it is showing? Because the MIT Power Business Unit which we created is assigned with a reference data set called common, and that common reference data set is already assigned used by number of business units. That is why you are seeing multiple business units in this form. Now how do you restrict this access? Now the question is, this is happening because of the reference data set. Okay, now how you restrict this one? You can define a security control on your role. That is one of the option. That is one of the option. And the other option is the you need to create a dedicated reference data set for each business unit. Okay, so dedicated security control on your role, what you can do is, we have seen the concept called custom role, right? The custom role, while creating a custom role, you can assign a business unit into that role, and whenever you assign that role to the business unit, let us say I have copied the invoice payable invoice supervisor, and I'm creating a custom role for that one. I have renamed like MIT Power BU AP. Okay, I had renamed like this. And while creating this business role, what I will do is I will assign MIT Power BU as part of configuration, and that role I am going to assign to the user. This way you can restrict this access, or else the other way is to create a dedicated reference data set that I have already replicated for one of the business unit, that I will show you in the application as well. Okay, in short, just remember why it is displaying the multiple business unit is because of your reference data set, that we use the common reference data set while defining our business unit, and whatever the whatever the business unit that are assigned with that common reference data set will be displayed here. Okay, so let us go and see the further on the invoice. So the next point is to select your supplier. Okay, so who is the supplier? We had created a supplier called BHL, right? Select that supplier, and the site automatically got populated. Why? Because for this supplier we have only one site. If it is two sites, then it will ask you to select from the list of values. Okay, so give the invoice number. So if you can see the invoice currency INR is got defaulted, right? From where it is getting defaulted? While defining the invoice option, we have given the invoice currency as INR and payment currency as INR. From where, that is where the value is getting default. Okay, so from where actually it get defaults, whenever we are trying to create an invoice, first of all, application goes and checks if the supplier site has any default value for this currency. If that doesn't exist, it goes and check in the next level as invoice options. If there is any value as a default, then it will default that currency. If there is no default, then simply it will be an empty form. You need to give the currency manually. So this is where this, if assume that there were no default at your supplier site level and invoice options level, it will be default. But by default, it will be nothing, empty. Okay, so INR currency I have selected, and there are different types of invoices that we will discuss, but the common invoice, the standard, the common invoice that you create is the standard invoice. There are different types of invoices, each of the type that we will discuss on each of this invoice type. Okay, just let us select the standard. Date is the invoice date. Payment terms is immediate, it got defaulted. Okay, for the payment terms, if you remember, we had assigned a custom reference data set on the set assignment, right? If you remember, while we are defining the common options in the payment terms list of values, we had seen number of payment terms defined, right? After that, what we did, we created a custom reference data set, and against that reference data set, we had created 3 payment terms, and that reference data set we had overridden at set assignment level. That is why you will be able to see only the payment terms that are assigned to the custom reference data set. Okay. Terms date is the invoice date by default. If this value gets defaults from your invoice options, so what does this terms date means? What does this terms date means? This is this base point, starting point to derive your due date. Let us say if my payment term sim is net 30, right? 30 days from which point the invoice amount has to be calculated? From this date, the terms date. Sorry guys, yes. So the terms date is the starting point, the base date from which the from which the due date will be calculated, depends upon your payment terms date. So let us say for this invoice, in the we will you should see net 30, because November 23 should be 22 should be 22 or 23 should be your due date. We will see that. Okay, requester is the requester who has requested this the item or something. So in return it is a buyer. So we will discuss while we are working on the purchasing. Okay, so the invoice header data we filled, and as I said, invoice header will have lines. So one header can have multiple lines. I am entering only one line for right now. So invoice header amount for 100 rupees of invoice, I am entering an invoice amount as invoice line amount as 100, against which we discussed, right? Invoice header will have lines, lines will have distributions. So distributions means this item, whatever the services, whatever the procurement I made, this amount has to go and hit why this is not reflecting. MIT power HL is the supplier site, test 100. I'm entering invoice lines now. Okay, give the invoice amount and you can enter the distributions for this. Click on distributions. Okay, click on add row. Why it is not allowing? Some issue with application. Let us try if application allows to proceed further. If not, we'll see. Invoice lines. So invoice distributions, you can give the distribution here as well, but let's see, we'll see why it is not allowing. Not an issue. Let's see if at least whether it allows from here. Fine, no problem. So ideally what happens is invoice will have lines, lines will have distributions. So when you have one line for one distribution, you can go and click here. It will allow it will allow you to enter the distribution. Let us first save this form. We'll see whether the value for attribute payment terms is not valid. Okay, so let us go and see whether the distributions are got populated or not. Okay, so ideally what happens, you can add the distribution. Since we had only one distribution, we had given the code combination. What is the distribution talks about is it is the code combination. I mean, this invoice, while we are creating an invoice for the supplier for this amount, which expense, let us say I am paying this 200 rupees for purchasing a paper or stationery account. That account code combination you need to give in your distributions. Okay, you can simply go and click here and it should pop up this line. Here we actually give the data. Okay, so let us see in the next invoice. We will try to insert the line over there. One invoice can have multiple lines, as we discussed. In the distributions, you can see you can add the multiple lines. If you click on symbol, plus symbol, it creates and adds another line against which your data will get stored. Okay, so once the invoice distributions are populated, so we had filled the entire data, we had given the invoice header, lines and distributions. Right now the status you can see is invoice is not validated. There are certain actions on the invoice form which you can do. We will discuss each of these in detail, but let us do it. The invoice actions, that the major action that you do is the once the invoice is created, you need to save. Once it is saved, you need to validate it. So what happens when you click on validate? It does certain validations. Application goes through in the backend, application goes through certain validations in the behind the screens. If any of the validation gets failed by the data whatever we filled, it puts that invoice into hold. Okay, where you can see that we will see. So now the status gets update. Now the status got updated to validate. Just click on this validate symbol. It shows the validation status is validated, accounting is not down, the invoice is not yet paid. We haven't paid this one, right? So assume that the invoice got failed in the validations. Where it goes and displays here. So the holds in the against the hold, it has number of categories against which if the invoice fails into this installments, it puts that into this area. If the invoice fails into line variance, it puts into the second area. Okay, like that the invoice will fall into one of the bucket. And if there is another option at the extreme left, this shows the who has created this invoice, what is the creation date and time, who was lastly updated on this invoice, and what is this timestamp that the invoice lastly got updated. This information you can see as part of it is kind of audit kind of a task it gives you. Okay, once the invoice is created and saved and validated, then our next task is to create this accounting. Right, create accounting, what it will do is it will create an journal, and it will create, when the journal is created, it has to be accounted, right? Debit and credit line has to be created. Did we created the credit line here so far? No, right? Did we created it? No. And you just need to accounting draft or post to ledger. Accounting draft, which means what happens is it creates an account, and it will be the accounting will be in draft mode. You can make the changes in an invoice. But when you click on post to ledger, what it will do is it will create an accounting, and it will create a journal as well. It creates a journal as well. The journal is already now, after this task, the journal, you will be able to see the journal in GL. Okay, so for the invoice, you can see the accounting, right? Did we created this accounting by any chance? No, we have created only this code combination. As part of your invoice distributions, we have created this code combination. And by what is the intention of this one? The 200 amount, line amount that I am paying against to this account. Assume that 10101 now we are seeing is tangible asset, but maybe it was a stationary expenses that we procured, we are paying. Ideally your account should be your stationary account, and this debit for the credit leg, what it has taken, the liability, it is your liability, right? The amount 200, it is your liability which you need to pay, right? From where this liability account is picked, did we created this, did we punch in this data to the invoice? No, this account actually got picked from your common options that we worked upon the first task from our payables configuration. Okay, high level, this is how you create your manual invoice. That in our next class we will discuss, we will create few more invoices, and we'll discuss the other concept around this invoice. What is this invoice lines, multiple lines, as well as what are this invoice line cancel. And if you see, there are invoice actions, there are a number of invoice actions. We will go and discuss each of this concept. And one more thing I wanted to show you, installments we discussed, right? Invoice structure, as part of the invoice structure we discussed the installments. Just go to the click on the installments. It will show you the installment, the invoice amount, how many installments you are going to pay. So this installment information, did we create it? Did we punch in the application name by chance anytime? No, this is derived by the system, depends upon the payment term setup and the terms date basis. Okay, so since we have taken the payment terms net immediate, MIT immediate means zero credit days. So which immediate means you need to pay on the same day, right? That is why the due date has derived as today's date only. And what is the invoice gross amount? 200. I mean the installment amount is 200, out of which how much amount is got paid? Nothing, right? We haven't paid anything on this account. That is why you can see the unpaid amount as 200. The entire invoice amount is unpaid so far. Okay, so I'll assume that the sum of the, once the payment is done on out of this invoice, the 100 amount got paid, 100 rupees you have paid. This amount, unpaid amount, will be adjusted back to 100. Out of 100, 200 you had paid 100, made 100 payment of 100. So the remaining amount will be marked as unpaid. Okay, this is one of the concept. So we had created a manual invoice, and we had seen the invoice structure as well. And in our next class, we will see the additional components or invoice actions that you perform around the invoice creation process. And also we will discuss what are the various ways you can create an invoice, as well as what are the different types of invoices. If you see here, there are a number of types. So what is the type, and where actually business scenario you create the different transaction types, that we will discuss. Fine. So we had created an invoice, and we had even created an accounting as well. We can even see that account as a last line. We can see that in the created invoice in GL as well. But by the time I open the invoice, if anyone has any doubts, you can ask me. No doubts? So let us go and see if the invoice journal is created in GL or not. Can you see, did we created this journal? This journal is created automatically by our payables module. That is why you can see the source as payables, and these are the lines which are got created against this journal. So this is how your journal gets created in GL, and this journal is automatically posted. Why? Because post to GL we had option we had selected, right? That is why you can see the journal is automatically posted in GL as well. Fine. So any questions?
No, Thiru, no.
Okay then. So tomorrow again one more ask on this tomorrow's class. Since tomorrow is a festival, should we have a class tomorrow or Tuesday? Or you guys want class on Wednesday? How you want to approach? So if you guys are fine, maybe we can have a class on Tuesday instead of Monday. So since tomorrow is a festival, maybe we can plan to have a class on Tuesday.
Yeah, should not be a
Yeah,
problem.
have a class on Tuesday.
Sorry?
And Tuesday is fine for us.
Yes. So we'll update the link for a Tuesday session. So we'll see you all guys on Tuesday. So happy Diwali to each one of you.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you. You
Thank you,
too.
Tirupati. Yeah.
Thank you, Tripti. Happy Diwali.
Thank you all. Thank
Bye.
you. Have a safe Diwali. Bye bye.